is Katie here from the Queen of Teen Fiction, and it is time to share with you the books that I have been reading throughout April. So I didn't read as much as I would have liked to throughout April. I think my problem is that I started too many books at once and ended up reading 4 different books at the same time. So I'm kind of close to finishing quite a few books, but I haven't finished them yet, so I can't talk about them in this month's wrap up. So there'll probably be a lot of books to talk about next month. But anyway, let's get started on April's reads. I'll begin with the books that I've been reading on my Kindle. And the first one is Race Girl by Leigh Hutton. Leigh writes this fantastic series of books called the Go Girls Chronicles. This is the 3rd book in these chronicles. They are very action-packed, sports-type stories. The girls in these books are always passionate about a certain sport, and we follow their journey to achieving goals that they want to in these sports. Race Girl, as you can probably guess by the title, is about horse racing. So Race Girl follows a girl named Tully Athens. Her mother died in a horse racing accident, and her father hasn't wanted her to race since that moment for fear of the same thing happening to her. However, where they live, Avalon Downs, is about to be sold to their rival, Mr. Weston, because Tully and her father can no longer afford to keep the place up and running without racers bringing them in money. However, Tully gets a deal on a horse that needs a lot of TLC. So she buys this horse for cheap and trains it up as her own, teaches her how to race, and Tully has a lot of determination to keep Avalon Downs afloat and to rebuild her life after her mother's death. Along the way, she meets and falls for Brandon Weston. Brandon is the son of Mr. Weston, who is currently trying to buy them out. These two families have been warring for a long time. They are bitter rivals. And so along the way we have a forbidden romance there as well. So I really liked the forbidden romance element of this story, and I also liked Tully as a character. I loved her passion for the horses and for racing, and I loved how her mother's accident wasn't going to put her off doing what she loved. Also, the racing scenes themselves are fantastically written and very action-packed. So I'd highly recommend these books if you're into sporting stories, and even if you're not, then you'll still love the characters and the romance and everything else that's going on. So the next book that I read on my Kindle is Wren, God's Little Monster by Sarah Noffke. This is quite a dark cover, so you can probably just see the reflection of the camera as I hold up my Kindle. But anyway, this is the sequel to Wren, the Man Behind the Monster that Sarah released last year. I talk about Sarah's books all the time, so you probably know the Dream Traveller world in which she sets her story. Because I've mentioned them, Wren is a character that appears in all of her series. In these books, she focuses purely on Wren and his life. And he is such an interesting character because he's quite vile to other people. But that's what makes him so great. Like, I probably would not like him if I was to meet him in real life. He would be very offensive, but I love to read about him. He's just so fascinating. I don't really want to say much about this book because spoilers, but there is an unexpected twist in Wren's life that he ends up having to deal with, and it puts strain on his relationship with Dahlia, which is the woman he fell in love with in the previous book. This book comes out on May 15th, and I will be reviewing it on my blog in more detail. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Wren is such a fantastic character, and I love him a lot. I could read about him all the time, so yeah. The next book that I read this month is Broken Sky by L.A. Weatherly. This has such an exciting concept for a story. It's set in an alternative 1940s America, and there is a politician taking over the government called Gunnison, and he makes up his rules based on astrology. He basically listens to what the stars tell him. The people under his power have to wear badges that state their star sign. He has a bunch of astrologers working for him, and if they make connections about a person's star sign that say they could potentially be trouble, then they're labelled as discordant and sent to labour camps. This story follows our protagonist Amity. She is a pilot for the World for Peace. The World for Peace is an organisation that is set up to deal with trouble in the world, basically. Instead of having to go for war over things like land and oil rights, they will send 2 pilots up into the air to fight each other, and whoever wins will get the rights. The pilots never know what they're fighting for. Until they finish their fight, they can find out if they want, and also the fights are tiered in accordance to importance. So it's a very, very interesting concept, so I was really excited to read it. I ended up having quite mixed feelings about the book, because whilst I loved the story idea, the concept and the world in which it was set in, I didn't connect with the characters as much as I wanted to. Amity has a best friend named Collis. She calls him Collie. He was her best friend throughout childhood, but after her father died, he ended up moving away with his family. Now he's back in her life as a fellow pilot, and it explores how their relationship has changed and developed. Their relationship, I liked it at times, but most of the time I found it quite predictable, so I wasn't really rooting too much for their relationship. I think I preferred Amity when she was alone as a character rather than when she was with Collie. But the closer it got to the end of the book, the more I valued their relationship. I just wish I'd enjoyed it more sooner on in the book. The characters surrounding those two main characters as well are really fascinating. There is a character called Kay who is worming her way into the inner circle of Gunnison. I can't figure out whether she's a good or bad character, but she is very interesting and I loved the chapters that were from her point of view. It follows Amity in first person and Kay in third person, so it was Kay's chapters that I enjoyed the most. So yeah, there are a really good variety of characters around the two main leads. So whilst there were times in this book that I was finding it was dragging a bit, the ending of it completely blew me away. The ending was so spectacular. There is such a plot twist that I kind of figured out a couple of chapters before the end, before it was confirmed, but when I figured it out I was like, oh my god, like, it's such a good plot twist. And I'm hoping that it's going to make the second book a lot more exciting, because I'm really keen to see the fallout from this. But like I said, it's a really interesting concept, so I'm going to stick with the trilogy. It hasn't completely sucked me in. It's not one of my favourites, but it's good. The next book that I read this month is Here Be Dragons by Sarah Musey. This is book 1 in the Snowdonia Chronicles, which is why I wanted to read it. This is a book set on Mount Snowdon. What a setting for a story. I mean, yeah, I was sold from the minute I found out it was set on Snowdon. I love Mount Snowdon, by the way. I have climbed it and it was one of the best experiences ever, and it's such a beautiful place and I want to go back there all the time. So yeah, I was going to read this book. This book follows Ellie. She lives in a cottage on the mountain with her mother. It's not a great life for somebody as young as Ellie. A teenager living on the mountain, not having as many options as other teenagers. So while she does love Snowdon, she kind of wants to get out as well. She only has a limited social circle as well because of how secluded they are on the mountain. She has two friends named Rhiannon and Sheila, and then she has her best friend, George. George was my favourite character, I just have to get that out there, because he's so cute. He's so in love with Ellie, and it's a little bit predictable to have the best friend of the protagonist in love with the protagonist, but I loved him anyway. It didn't affect his character negatively. I kind of did want to shake him at some points and just tell him, Ellie doesn't want you, George. Move on and find somebody nice. But anyway, Ellie's not in love with George. She ends up finding the mysterious Henry up on the mountain. She doesn't really know much about Henry, but obviously she's drawn in by his mysterious nature. The more time she spends with him, the more she learns about his life and how he's not exactly what she expected him to be. And even though he keeps forbidding her to get involved with him, she can't stay away. So I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, the book's about dragons on Mount Snowdon. So the last book that I read this month is The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. So I don't really want to talk too much about this in my wrap-up video because I do have a review of this book that will be on my channel shortly. It's going to take a while to edit though, because I kept talking and talking and talking and I would not shut up about this book, and now I'm filled with regret because I have to edit that. But anyway, it will be on my channel at some point. I've still got my markers in the book. That's only some of the things that I wanted to talk about. I had a notebook with 4 full pages of things. You've probably guessed that I love this book. It is the final book in the Raven Cycle series. It didn't disappoint. I loved it, and I will keep talking about how much I love this book for a long time. But if you haven't ever read this series, then I would highly recommend it because the story and the characters are so fantastic. And if you like stories that focus more on the bond of friendship between a group of people, then this is for you, because it's all about these friends and their quest to find a dead Welsh king. It's really fantastic and I can't praise it enough. So that is it for this month. That's all I've read. It's only been 5 books that I've managed to get finished. Like I said, I'm halfway through a lot of books, so I'll be talking about them next month. I have a lot of exciting books coming up that I'm about to start reading as well, so I'm really excited. So as always, please do let me know what you've been reading throughout April. Also, what are you planning to read throughout May? Let me know all the things in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!